Shalom Aleichem Yidden. Emor el Kohanim. Speak, say to the priest, to the Kohanim. Ve'amarta Aleichem, and say to them. There's a duplicity over here. There's a duplicate saying, a redundancy in this week's Torah portion right at the start. It says, Hashem said to Moshe, and God told Moses, saying, Emor el Kohanim, speak to the Kohanim, to the priests, ve'amarta aleihem, and say to them. Why not just speak, or why not just say to them? Why the double expression? This is a question that's asked by all the biblical commentators, and Rashi, right there, explains, and he says, Emor ve'amarta. He says two things. There's two versions of the same word emor, which means to say. And he says emor ve'amarta. He quotes both of them, and he says lahazhir hagadolim al haktanim. This is telling us that the elders, the adult kohanim, the priests, should teach and make aware, and actually lahazhir means to warn them, to admonish them, to make sure that they're careful about the laws of the priesthood. Lahazhir hagadolim al haktanim. This has become a very, very famous quote when it comes to it. All matters of education. Lahazhir hagadolim al haktanim. To warn the elders about the youngsters. So, not only that Moshe should teach it to the Kohanim, literally, but also that they should teach it, that's the double expression, to the young ones, to those who are yet uneducated. So, this is a famous saying that, a famous idea, that it's us adults who have, or any adult, anybody who's big in any sense, bigger than another person in any area, has a responsibility to teach those who do not yet know, whether it's a youngster in years or a youngster in knowledge. If you know something more than someone else does, it's your responsibility to teach them, as it is quoted in this week's Torah portion. So, Chaim Olevsky here, Chabad Family Programs. We're going to dive into some beautiful thoughts over here, from the mystical, Hasidic, to the practical. Like, for example, the question is that if you look inside the Torah, in the whole 5 books of Moses, there are only 3 places where the Torah says, where this expression is used, lahazhir hagdolim al haktanim, to warn, to make sure that the elders are careful to teach this very strongly, in a strict, the usage of the vocabulary here is a strong one. Lahazhir means to warn them. Beware. So where are the 3 times? Where are they? There are 3 times. One of them is when the Torah talks about the prohibition of eating insects. Crunch. Anybody like to eat insects? Actually not. Most people don't. But over there it says, warn the youngsters. Make sure that they don't eat insects. Moving on, the next one is the prohibition of drinking blood. When did you have your last cup of blood? Right? That hasn't happened recently. That's the second one. Then the third one is over here in these laws of purity and impurity. In this week's Torah portion, it starts off a whole array of the concepts of purity and impurity in the life of a Kohen. If somebody, God forbid, passes away in the life of a Kohen, to whom can he become impure, defile himself, attend their funeral, take care of the dead, etc., etc. So those are the 3 places where the Torah tells us, lehazhir hagdolim al haktanim, to warn, that the elders should warn the youngsters. Why these 3? What do they have in common? Good question. I'm glad you asked. We'll talk about that soon. But first we'll dive into a little bit of the Hasidic interpretation, where the Rebbe quoted many, many times. The word lehazhir, as you know, in Hebrew, it's a godly, divine language, and one word has many interpretations, and they're all linked. So lehazhir hagdolim haktanim means to warn, that the old elders, the adults, should warn the children. But it also comes from the word zohar. Lehazhir means to shine. Lehazhir hagdolim al haktanim means to shine the elders over the youngsters. What does that mean? Says the Rebbe that number one, our job is not just to teach Torah and to teach values of life, of godly values, spiritual and moral values to our children, to ourselves, and to the world, but it's lehazhir, it's to make our children and our students shine. Lehazhir hagdolim al haktanim, make them shine. That's number one. And also, says the Rebbe, lehazhir hagdolim, make them shine in the sense that they enjoy and they appreciate what they're learning, and they want to shine. And shining, by definition, means that it's a light that others can see, which means that they themselves will want to share this light with others. So lehazhir hagdolim al haktanim over here takes on a new form. It means not just that the elders should carefully warn the youngsters about the laws of the Torah, but the Rebbe expands it and extends it to us in every area of Torah and Judaism. Lehazhir hagdolim al haktanim means when we teach another person, when we teach either our children or our students or our friends, anybody, says the Rebbe, who is younger than you, smaller than you in years or in knowledge, make them shine. Do it in a beautiful way that they themselves will continue and shine further. Lehazhir hagdolim al haktanim. And then the Rebbe says that when you shine, others, when you are the shiner, lehazhir hagdolim, you also become the Shinee. You become illuminated yourself. You shine yourself. So, lehazhir hagdolim al haktanim means that the adults teach the children and make them shine, and in turn, they become shinier. They become more illuminated, more pure, and closer to Hashem. And that is something that the Rebbe said many, many times in many different ways. And to throw in parenthetically, he also says that it is much easier for a child, and it's more effective for a child to pick up on good habits and on rituals and on lifestyle matters and on character traits when they see them acted out, when they see them in action. When we learn about a ritual or we learn about a character trait, it doesn't have the effect as it does when we see it happening in real life. So the Rebbe says we, the adults, should role model what we want our children to learn, what we want our students to gain. Role model, practice more, preach less. So practice more than preach. And the Rebbe moves on and also speaks about the timing of this week's Torah portion. The timing of this week's Torah portion, Emor, is during the counting of the Omer. Between Pesach and Shavuos, we count 49 days. And he takes us for a journey in the words of the Torah. They say, Usafartem lachem, and you shall count for yourselves. You should count. Talking about the Omer, the Torah says, and you should count Sheva Shabbosos Tmimos Tihiena. 7 weeks, Tmimos, they should be complete. They should be perfect. So Usafartem means to count, and we all count the 49 days every day. We count another 1 day towards Shavuot, towards Mount Sinai, towards our getting of receiving of the Torah. But we're not just counting, we're actually preparing ourselves. And he says that the word of Sefartem, Sefira to Omer, counting, also shares the root with sapphire, which in Hebrew is a sapphire, the stone, the sapphire. And it also means luminescence, it means light, it means clarity and light. So it's the word Sephira shares the verb of counting, means count, but also means shine like the sapphire. Illuminate, become illuminated. And in today's Hayom Yom, which is this little booklet, this little calendar that the Rebbe wrote before he became Rebbe in Gimble, it was 43, I think it was. So over there in today's insert, it talks about this and says, how do we become this shining person? Usafartem lachem, how do you become this shining person, this illuminated person, this clear person, this holy person? We do it by Sheva Shabbosos Tmimos, by counting the 7 weeks. Now these 7 weeks, they are also paralleling. There's 7 midot, 7 character traits that we all have. They're chesed, gevurah, tiferes, netzach, hod, yisod, malchus. I'm not going to get into them right now, but there's 7. There's kindness, there's strictness, but each of the 7 character traits are composed of the other 7. So 7 times 7 is 49. So too, in these 49 days of the Sefirat HaOmer, the counting of the Omer between Pesach and Shavuot, we are meant to refine one of these 49 character traits. So for maybe a little example, we have chesed. The first one is chesed, which means kindness and giving. The second one is gevurah, which is the opposite. It was restriction, strength, holding back. So the first day is chesed of chesed, kindness within kindness. The second day is gevurah, shebechesed, the strictness within kindness. And what might that be? That might be kindness over here means giving, just giving of oneself. But a strictness means withholding. And that might seem like a negative. But when you're withholding a dangerous item or something that is improper for someone to have, then that itself is a kindness. That would be gevurah, strictness, shebechesed, within kindness. So it's truly an act of kindness, but it's seemingly an act of restraint, of withholding. So that, says the Rebbe, and all the previous Rebbes from the Baal Shem Tov down, the Maggid of Mizrich, Alter Rebbe, and they all taught that these 7 weeks are 7 weeks of refinement. Every day, another character trait. And in every siddur, you'll see that, every prayer book, right next to the number. Today was 25. Last night we counted number 25. Today's Sephira is Netzach, Shebe Netzach. It's victory within victory. So it's the ultimate of victory. So, which means we can overcome any obstacles to our faith, to our being the best we can be. Okay, so that was that idea of the 7 perfected midot. Then we reach Sheva Shabbatot, or Shabbosos Tmimos Tiena. Then we reach the 7 Shabbos, the day of rest, which is in itself a holy, perfect day. So the Rebbe is telling us, when we refine our character traits, we become illuminated and luminescent like the Shabbos. To wrap up with the answer to our first question. First question was, when in this week's portion it starts off, has Emor lakonim Emor v'amarta, say and say again. There's a double expression of speaking, and the question is why. And Rashi said, lehazhir hagdolim alaktanim. This is to warn the elders that they should warn the youngsters. And we said that there's only 3 places in the Torah where it says that, where it has that that instruction, that very, very sharp instruction. And why? And here's what the Rebbe says. The 3 places were, number 1, the prohibition of drinking blood. The prohibition of eating insects. Number 2, the prohibition of drinking blood. Number 3, the laws of the Kohein, laws of purity and impurity. Says the Rebbe, these 3 mitzvos, these 3 instructions from the Torah, have something in common. What they have in common, maybe aside from other things, is that they might bring a person, a parent, or a teacher, or a friend, to despair, to give up on helping another person grow, helping our own child, our student, our friend, or even ourselves. How so? Says the Rebbe, starting with insects. Says, who likes to eat insects? Anybody? Okay, so the Torah tells us that naturally people are disgusted with the concept of eating insects. There has to be something kind of wrong with the person if they're comfortable eating insects in our society. Says the Rebbe, blood, not today, but believe it or not, in the olden days, blood was the drink of choice. It was like the milk of today or the Coke of today. It was the drink of choice. Everyone drank it and everyone wanted it. And it was something that people were habituated to do it. Everybody drank the blood. They thought it was healthy, and it might be healthy in some ways. Bottom line is, it was very popular. The most popular drink, number one. The laws of the Kohanim, says the Rebbe, the laws of purity and impurity are completely illogical. They're completely faith-based. There's nothing logical, nothing, and we don't understand them. We just do them, and we just study them because God said so. Says Rebbe, these three characteristics could be something that puts a parent or teacher into despair, into giving up and losing hope of helping another. Why? It says, starting with the insects. So Rebbe says if somebody's behavior, somebody's conduct is akin to eating insects, whether or not they eat the insects, but if their behavior is so low, it's like eating insects in any other area, a teacher or a parent or a friend or myself might say, you know what, it's a lost cause. There's no way this person can ever get back on the straight and narrow path. Let's just give up on him or her. Says the Rebbe, no. That's why the Torah needs to kind of remind us and admonish us and empower us and tell us, even if someone's eating insects, even if someone's doing something really subhuman, there's hope. Go ahead and give it your best shot, and God will help you. And the same thing with blood, or on the reverse. Somebody, in those days, they drank blood. It was the drink of choice. So the Rebbe says, what happens if somebody says, I've habituated to doing this all my life. There's no way I can change now. Like, for example, today, somebody might tell you, stop drinking milk, stop drinking Coke, stop drinking tea, or something like that. And you say, well, I've been doing it all my life. And you might say, oh, it's too late. It's a lost cause. The person's too far gone. Says the Rebbe, no, habits can be changed. We can change our habits, and even if we've been doing something for a long time, don't give up on the person. One of my favorites is the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Shalom. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and there's also 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teenagers, which I just listened to with my daughter. They're very good. So we could change your habits. Third, last but not least, is the laws of the Kohanim. The laws of purity and impurity. Those are all faith-based laws. And a person might say, you know what, I could handle teaching, inspiring laws that make sense to me, laws that make sense to another. Don't steal, don't kill. 10 Commandments sound good. Honor your parents. We could stretch it to that if we must. The civil laws of justice. But something to do with purity and impurity, like if you touch a dead person, you can't eat certain foods, or you have to go to the mikvah. Any laws of purity and impurity have no basis in logic, and they're not logical, so I can't teach them. Says the Rebbe, you can shine with them. Not only can you teach them, but you can shine, make others shine, and shine yourself. And of course, it's always better to start young. It's always easier when we train our youth, train the next generation sooner than later. that's the story for today. God bless you guys. Thanks for watching and share. Take care.